So the last video had to do with the Microsoft ban. This video is actually more of a return to smartwatches in general, because I was looking back through my previous videos, and in April of this year, I did a video on my thoughts on the smartwatch. Well, now that Apple's turned around and thrown their hat into the ring, I think it's time that I gave my 2 cents, especially now that we know more of its capabilities. Now, for those of you who do not know, because I have had a couple of new subscribers, I am looking at getting a new iPhone this holiday season. One of the things that I want to do, though, is make sure that it doesn't end up with the same fate as my Galaxy, all torn up and, battered on the floor and what have you. And I think one of the ways to help with that is to alleviate the need to take it out of my pocket so often, hence the smartwatch. The one that's on my wish list is the Pebble. And the main reason for that is because of the price. Price, longevity, water resistance, the fact that I can get notifications. Now, it would require me to wear a headset if I wanted to answer a call without having to take the phone out of my pocket or just tap a button on the headset. But that actually leads me to another interesting little query about smartwatches in general. One of the other products on the market that is cross-compatible, the Pebble's able to work with iOS and Android. The only other one that is able to do that at the moment is the Martian Passport. Well, the whole Martian lineup, but their deluxe model is the Passport. The Pebble retails at the moment for $99 in the United States. With the Martian Passport, retails for $250. Now, what do you get for that $250? You got a much more inconspicuous timepiece, and you've got what is essentially a Bluetooth headset that has a built-in display along with your watch. Now, this is where I scratch my head, because you get this nice little white text on black background display, which for me, as somebody with poor depth perception that prefers high contrast, it would be a major plus. But compared to the Pebble, yes, you do get voice input and output, but it's really no different than using Siri. The Pebble's considerably less expensive. It has much more water resistance. In other words, right around this time of year, especially going into January and February, my area is going to get some pretty significant rainfall, or at least it should. And where I live, that's going to be among the most rain that we get until probably around July. But unfortunately, the rain is always unpredictable. As a result, it's really nice to be able to have something on my wrist where I can go out, and if there's a sudden downpour, I don't have to worry about it getting ruined. With the Pebble, excuse me. With the Pebble, I don't have to worry so much about that. Whereas with the Martian has no water resistance whatsoever. In fact, it's a lot more delicate. In fact, it's just as fragile as my Solar Talking Atomic Watch. And the Solar Talking Atomic Watch, a couple months ago, was sitting on my my windowsill here behind my bed. And I reached to get it, and it fell down onto the carpet. And it was just regular carpet. It wasn't anything hard. And yet, my minute hand was knocked out of alignment.
It's 7 o'clock.
7 p.m.
So I had to realign the hands, and that was a happy little feature. One of the really cool things, though, about the Martian is you sacrifice the rigidity for a couple of other things besides the the ability to essentially turn your watch into a wrist Bluetooth speakerphone. One of the things that you do get is if you're in the Martian Watch app on your device, then you've got the ability to, in effect, have dual time. The LED display here on the bottom where it says Jane Smith, and I'll go ahead and zoom in here so you can get a better look at that. That display has the ability to display the time that's on your phone, and you can synchronize the hands to another time zone, which I think is a really neat little feature. It's something that's not available on the Pebble. Now, on the upside, the Pebble has the ability to display dual time, and you can even change the look of your watch face. There's a Mickey Mouse watch face that I'm very interested in. And yet, with the Martian, you're able to both receive and transmit data in the form of cell phone calls, and text messages. Now, I understand you can do that on the Pebble with an app called Glance, but I honestly have no idea how that works, because the Pebble has no audio input or output whatsoever. That actually might be a plus for the Pebble if you think about it, because if you're in a quiet environment, the only thing you'll have is vibrations to worry about, whereas with the Martian, you can get the same thing, but you'd have to explicitly enable that. On the Martian's favor, there's a little LED light, whereas with the Pebble, if you miss the notification, you have to manually scroll back, and in my mind, what I'm thinking is if it disappears after a few seconds and I don't notice it till 10 or 15 minutes afterwards, I might not even know that something new popped up unless I were to go in to manually check. Now keep in mind, the only Pebble I've actually seen is a demo unit, and I couldn't even get in to check the settings or customize the font size because Pebble wouldn't allow it. And I have not seen a working Martian. I've seen the notifier, but I have not seen a working Martian Passport. So I am completely new to this. But you can see how the ups and downs, it's really a it's a complex market. Even for such a new market that is unproven, it's also very complex. So the way I see it is for $99, one would get water resistance, scrollable notifications, and freedom to customize and cross-compatibility. Whereas for an additional $150, you get the ability to have dual time, the ability to have your timepiece, in effect, act separately from your smartwatch, which is a really neat little feature, because if you're on an airplane, you can turn the smart features off completely and still have your analog watch. Whereas with the Pebble, you'd have to disable Bluetooth manually on both sides, which obviously you'd have to do on the Martian. But on the Martian, there's no question about whether or not you'd have the time. Whereas with the Pebble, you would have to effectively enable airplane mode, and I'm not sure what that would disable as far as synchronization for the time and whatnot. So for the extra $150, you lose out on the water resistance, but you do gain what is essentially Siri on your wrist. Now, here's the interesting part. The other voice command watch available is the Samsung Gear series. The problem there is you have to have a Samsung phone in order for it to operate. You get a lot less flexibility. Yet Apple's operating the same card with their Apple Watch. Now the Apple Watch is an interesting concept because it too, like the Martian, has the ability to utilize Siri, except far more intimately, from what I understand. It doesn't do anything differently than, say, the Martian or the Pebble, but I think the idea is that with it being much more closely tied to iOS, you're probably going to have a much more consistent experience versus the Martian and the Pebble both of which I've heard that the Pebble's actually gotten a lot better over the last year, but from what I understand, the Martian still kind of is a hit and miss when it comes to notifications, etc., etc. But the Apple Watch starts at an additional $150 above the Martian, and the Martian's already $250. And that's if you want the sport version of the Apple Watch. If you want the stainless steel version, see what I'm saying? It's wacky. Now, in terms of the voice commands, it'd be nice to have these on my wrist, but at the same time, the Martian doesn't give you anything different than having a Bluetooth headset connected, because the Martian is displayed to your iPhone as a Bluetooth headset. Now, granted, visually speaking, yes, it does give you, and in my case, it would be nice to have a little blinking LED and a little display on the bottom to show you your notifications. But for somebody who's entirely blind, this smartwatch market's even more of a murky water experience, so to speak. I just don't know. I think for right now, until the Apple Watch is available and press have actually gotten a chance to take a look at it, which won't be till the spring, the two choices in my mind are the Martian or the Pebble. And just to recap, the way I see it, for $99 on the Pebble, you get vibrating notifications, you get water resistance, but the key is, in order to effectively use the Pebble to answer a call, for instance, you have to either take your phone out of your pocket or you have to wear a Bluetooth headset. None of the Bluetooth headsets that I've seen that are out there, at least none that are stereo, just the ones that are inconspicuous and just kind of sit there on your ear, and don't look like a big, recording studio on your head. Those, those are not water resistant. So it's really interesting. So, and yet for the additional $150, you drop the water resistance, but you gain full access to Siri, and if you're on Android, whatever voice control app you've got set up to pair with it, along with the ability to make and receive calls, send and receive texts, send and receive emails. So it's a very, very sort of Power Rangers kind of experience. Now, I know a lot of people have been relating it to Dick Tracy, but I've never really watched Dick Tracy, so I grew up with Power Rangers, so I'm going to use that. But if you remember the original Power Rangers, the wrist communicators, for iOS, the Martian is the closest thing we've got until the Apple Watch is available. And of course, if you're on Android, there's another choice in the Samsung Gear series, only if you have a Samsung device, though. If you have another Android device, you're kind of left in the same doghouse with the Pebble in the sense that there's no Google... There's OK Google, and you can interact visually, but you cannot interact audibly with the device. And then we come up to that question, about just using a Bluetooth headset. Now, a lot of people are going to probably comment on this video, why not just use the Bluetooth headset, considering the ones like this one, which, for those of you who cannot see, is the one that's really tiny mono earpiece, kind of sits there. Well, part of the problem there is, what if you get jarred about and it ends up falling off and you don't notice it? The wrist, the smartwatch would be far easier to keep track of. But then the question is whether or not it's worth the additional $150 over the Pebble. So, it's a real mystery out there. Those are my thoughts on the current smartwatch market, and of course this will be growing, especially as we get to CES in January. But what do you guys think? Thank you for watching, comments are welcome, and have a nice day.